Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to do a very special video, another pitch video in my Slasherverse series that I came up with in 2017. Basically, I thought if you were to have all the slasher characters meet together in a universe, this is how it should happen. And I came up with the idea that, what you'd first have to do is you'd have to make basically like reboots for every character in order for them to feel refreshed, for them to actually become better characters. Like a lot of these characters I thought were very bland and one-dimensional. Like, honestly, I've never really been a fan of Jason. I've always been a fan of characters like Angela from Sleepaway Camp and characters like her because I thought, she's really a lot more dimensional, like a lot more in depth than Jason. And so when I thought about having to come up with a Friday the 13th idea, I thought, oh shit, like this is going to be really hard. But then what happened was I started playing the Friday the 13th video game, and I loved it so much that it actually completely like changed my mind to where now I really like Jason. And the game really showed me that like you could make a really good Friday the 13th movie probably forever. Like, it's just endless, the possibilities and the stuff that happened on these matches is just, it's just unforgettable. So, with all that said, I went insane with this with this outline. I was trying to get it done very fast, but I'm thorough. And I really like to flesh out everything to make sure that, all questions are pretty much answered. And so, this is a 27 pages, 5 pages longer than the Sleepaway Camp pitch. And so and I also wanted to say that, I did think that I was going to get all the pitch videos done by Halloween, but there are so many pitches that I will have to say like, okay, this will be the last one, and then I will have to, do some other work before I leave here, and then by Thanksgiving I will have the other 3 or the other 2, and then it'll start a next phase, because this is just phase 1. This was just phase 1 of the pitches that I thought it's basically like a long introduction in a sense. And so this script, this outline, I was really also inspired by Twin Peaks. I really thought that one of the things that they really missed the mark on in the Friday the 13th series is making the forest itself scary. And you hear a lot about these paranormal hotspots like the Devil's Backbone, and where you have all these entities sightings and these ghost sightings. And I thought, with all that energy from Jason killing people, you'd have that type of stuff happen. And so I thought that that would be a very interesting element to add to this sort of reboot to the character. So, and I would also compare this to Logan, and just in terms of it feels very refreshing, and it feels like he's really back. He's not like Michael Myers in Halloween Ends. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay. Whoops. I had a little spoiler at the beginning that I'm just gonna cross this out. I'm just crossing it out so I don't accidentally read it and spoil it for you guys, since I came up with that idea and then Okay. Caption: Packanack Lodge, 1981. Jenny stands in front of the window. Paul releases their dog to go say hi to her, thinking everything is okay. All of a sudden, Jason Voorhees grabs Jenny through the window and pulls her outside. Paul gets up and grabs a weapon, a wrench. He runs outside and starts attacking him. Jason quickly turns to him, dropping Jenny, and he picks up Paul. Paul drops the wrench, losing air. We see a POV shot of the film getting fuzzy and eventually fading out. Paul is tied up with twine in Jason's shack. He wakes up, horrified to be in there again. He doesn't see Jason. He tries getting loose, but he can't. Feeling there's nothing to lose, he breaks his wrist and slips his hand through the twine. He then attempts to relocate it, probably unsuccessful. He is barely able to use his weak hand to help himself out. Then he gets up and once again peeks around the corner. It is very creepy, the forest sound. It isn't silence just because people aren't talking. He then sees the mom's head and looks into her eyes. He becomes transfixed on them, although he can't hear any voice. He leaves the shack. Paul walks in the forest towards his girlfriend's cabin. He hears an ambulance and runs to see it. That's where he spots Jason standing behind a tree. With a single sound, he could let Jason know he's there. He tries peeking out to see what's going on. We see Jenny being rolled away. Her dog is carried out by an ambulance worker. It's perfectly fine. Paul tries circling around Jason to get to her, but as soon as he steps on a twig, Jason turns his head from afar. Paul quickly ducks down. We hear a Paul looks up to see if Jason is still looking at him. He's gone. Paul stands up and boom, Jason is right behind him. His face, soul-penetrating anger. Paul gasps and runs. The ambulance drives away. Paul circles a cluster of trees, running as fast as he can. Jason slowly loses track of him. Eventually, Paul reaches the lake where he spots a little island. Maybe he can stay on there until he gets rescued. He swims to the island, the pain in his broken wrist overwhelming. He makes it to the island and climbs up to a little cave. Sitting in there, he thinks he's found safety, but he's incredibly cold and his wrist still hurts like hell. He sits there shivering in fear. He starts a fire using some spare bar matches in his pocket. He starts a fire. Wait, I was going to read that again. We see in back of him, Jason is standing in the abyss. He walks towards Paul and towers over him. Paul looks at him, frozen in fear. Instead of killing him, Jason points his machete at him. It's like he expects something to happen. He pokes a scared Paul. Paul doesn't say anything. He's too afraid. Jason gets impatient. Finally, he raises his machete and beheads Paul. The head rolls down the cliff and into the water, where it drifts along next to an old toy boat. Jason stands there waiting. He looks for something. Then Jason has a fit. He's snarling and making inhuman noises as he kicks Paul's body into the fire. It's like he's angry something didn't go as planned. We see a close-up of his body burning in the fire, Jason hulking over him. For the opening titles, I want there to be a giant 1 which flies towards the screen. Safi said that she can't even hear her movie because the TV is so loud. That's pretty funny. Where was I? Representing Paul as Jason's first victim is that number 1. Then the Friday, the, and the 3th fly towards the screen. Altogether, the titles are wrapped up in barbed wire and attempt to break free. Blood comes out of the titles. Caption: December 2023. We see the familiar silver Shamrock van. It's presumably right after Sleepaway Camp 5. Stephanie is driving now. The ghost hunter leader coughs. Andy is in back sitting next to Molly, them both facing Leatherface. Andy says, "Hey man, not very talkative, are you? Do you talk?" Leatherface sits there staring at them creepily. Stephanie says, "Just leave him alone, Andy." Andy says, "What? We've been asking him for the past 10 hours where he wants us to take him. We offered to buy him breakfast, and he's just sitting there." Molly suggests, "Maybe he's sick." Leatherface's demeanor doesn't change. Stephanie says, "Maybe he..." Andy says, "What?" Stephanie says nothing. She cranks up the radio. The song "I'm on My Way" by Barbara Dane starts playing. Well, I think it's a cover, or it's just, whatever. The ghost hunter leader says, "If you guys wouldn't mind, I'd like to get off here." Stephanie laughs as if it's a joke. He's serious. She then looks over and sees pictures of them on his phone. A news article. Stephanie says, "Sir, listen, we mean you no harm. This is a complete misunderstanding." The ghost hunter leader says, "Pull over now." His hand clutches the door. She instinctively locks the van doors. He says, "The fuck?" Andy says, "Stephanie, what's going on?" Leatherface sits there staring creepily. Molly starts shaking. He says, "Let me out of here. Let me go. Please don't hurt me. I have a dog." Stephanie says, "He knows, Andy." Andy says, "Shit. Sir, as my girlfriend said, we mean you no harm. You don't have to He sees him on the phone app about to secretly call the police, and he rushes up there to grab it. He takes it and smashes it. The guy starts freaking out and trying to open the car door, trying to smash it open, the window. They try calming him. Why is that right, coming? Fucking autocorrect, fucking bitch-ass iPhone, trying to calm him down. Leatherface looks up at him. He begins making weird and strange noises. Molly says, "Shh, guys, listen." They all eventually quiet down as the noises get louder and louder. The ghost hunter leader looks back at Leatherface. Leatherface leaps up at the ghost hunter leader and takes out Nubbins' rusty straight razor and slashes the hunter's throat. Blood squirts all over the front window. The van swerves off the road with the aid of the ice and snow on the road. Andy and Molly try to grab Leatherface. He thrashes at them, accidentally slashing open Andy's arm. Andy falls back. Molly gasps in horror as she's thrown back. Stephanie unlocks the doors and yells, "Throw him out! Get him out!" Andy and Leatherface stare in each other's eyes, waiting for the other to make a move. Andy, with no choice, moves towards Leatherface. He shoves his hand in his face to try to open the back door and distract him. Leatherface's waxy face is pulled off of Andy. This causes Molly and Andy to gasp in horror. Stephanie is trying to get the car started back up. Leatherface smashes Andy against the van's back door over and over. Stephanie gets the van started and starts driving fast. "Throw him out! Quick! Get him out!" Eventually, he breaks the doors open with Andy, and then Molly gets the nerve to leap forward and push Leatherface out. Leatherface grabs his face mask and slashes Molly's wrist open on the way out. A creepy blood trail smears on the floor down and out of the back of the van. They speed away from him in their van. Leatherface quickly recovers and gets up, putting back on his mask and walking along the road, as he did in the last film. Caption: Jason's shack. The shack looks even worse somehow. One would question, how is it even holding together? And they'd also say it smells like rot and sawdust. I was going to say Saul Goodman. It smells like Saul Goodman. That would be fucking hilarious. Jason meets Saul. He wouldn't let Kim get away with her bullshit. We hear construction vehicle noises. They invade the forest ambience. Jason wakes up now having lost the majority of his hair and looking even more different. I'm just emphasizing this to show the contrast between the two time periods, not to say that this is an original idea that he lost his hair. You know, I'm not trying to imply that. He puts on his iconic hockey mask. We hear ma, 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 ma. He walks outside to investigate. Construction workers are roaming about the forests like aliens in their neon uniforms. Men are placing down colored flags all around Camp Crystal Lake. Men in suits are discussing everything while holding up large sheets of paper. Jason's POV. We poke around a tree and see men laughing about how to tear down the property. Then we see them heading further towards Jason's shack. We start running in that direction. Jason runs inside his shack and paces around. Are they coming to him? It's raining and dark out. Suddenly, he sees bright headlights shining through the shack. We see the lights shining on his body. He's pissed. He walks over to his mom's head and kneels and stares at it. And so, obviously, if you guys have listened to my videos, you know what this is inspired by. So, just wanted to make that clear. Because I really enjoyed writing this because after what's happened. Some construction vehicles come from off the road. Flaggers stand by as they block the road, making a huge disruption. Cars honk at them. They go into the forest. They drive along when suddenly they run into Jason standing in the middle of the road. Their lights flash on him and he confidently marches towards them. One of them stops and gets out of his car to chase him off his vehicle. He immediately picks him up by his throat as he's yelling at him to get away from their vehicles. Then he opens up his mouth and hooks the top of his mouth onto the crane from his vehicle and pulls his body until the top of his head rips off, blood squirting everywhere. The other construction worker in the bulldozer is horrified. Jason leans down and picks up the demolition tool that the guy had with him. He holds it up as the bulldozer guy drives at him, planning to run him down. Then he jumps out of his vehicle thinking Jason will not hit him. He rolls over and gets up, Jason stepping out of the way of the dozer. He gets up and Jason doesn't hesitate to toss the demolition tool at his head, penetrating his skull and making him fall over. He's still alive though, so we hear his breathing as he falls down. Jason picks up the bulldozer by its back and drags it to his breathing corpse. Then he lets the wheel fall down on his head. He picks up the bloody demolition tool and walks away. The men in suits get out of their car and begin walking towards Jason's shack. One of them has a survey stick and goes to measure something. When the suited man enters the shack, surprisingly there is no mother's head. He looks around curiously and then kneels down. There are candles mysteriously lit there, adding a gothic atmosphere. Then he stands up and sees a scary shot of Jason standing there, his eyes bulging, an angry look. Before he can scream, Jason lowers the demolition tool with both hands. Then he picks him up and gouges out his eyes with his fingers. He presses and presses until he has enough of a grip to squeeze inside of his skull. Blood goes everywhere. The surveyor is measuring. We see what he's looking at. He looks down for a second, and then in the corner of his eye, he sees something or someone running in front of him. Then we see him measuring again. Jason is right behind him. He grabs his neck and presses his head down onto the survey stick. The stick stabs all the way down through the top of his head. He then presses it down to the ground. His body shakes around while Jason walks away. We see bodies of dead construction workers all over the place. We hear their screaming, their terrible screaming. Then we see vehicles turned over, tools lying about, ugly, grisly scenes. Jason steps over a freshly dropped body, blood gushing out of his mouth, teeth falling out. Jason approaches another group of construction workers. They're working around a huge supplies crate. Their leader thinks something's up. He can't reach anyone on his walkie-talkie. Jason steps out from behind a tree. He walks towards them holding 2 bloody sledgehammers. The walkie-talkie guy turns and sees him and tells his men to run. He once again tries to contact his boss on the walkie-talkie. Jason uses both sledgehammers to crush his head, them clinking together as blood squirts everywhere. His men run away. Jason runs to one of them, keeping an eye on the other one. Oh wait, no. He keeps on looking back at Jason and screaming. He's holding a crowbar and decides to turn around and fight Jason. Jason catches the crowbar midair and bends it in half. Then he smacks him in the face so hard he knocks the bottom of his jaw off. He screams. Jason grabs his fighting body and shoves the bent crowbar down his throat. Then, before he leaves, he remembers something. He bends down and rips open the guy's chest, retrieving the crowbar and unbending it. The last construction guy has run to the businessman's vehicle. He gets inside of it and starts driving away, thinking he's safe. All of a sudden, he's run into from the side by a bulldozer. Jason pushed that dozer to where it just stuck out some and crashed the car. It is completely wrecked. He approaches the guy in the car and drags him out. He picks up every huge shard of glass and stabs them into his body. Then he pushes his eyes onto the broken window frame and rubs his head up and down the shards and the sharp edges. His eyeballs slice open. He continuously rubs his head back and forth until it saws open. Then he stands up and takes out his crowbar. We see him grabbing parts and getting them free with the crowbar. We then see Jason going up to the supply crate and easily getting into it. He gathers more supplies. We see a montage of him creating a new mask in his shack, using the parts from his crate and the car. He cuts pieces of metal, he hammers bolts, he blow torches. In the background, we see his mother's head is back up in the shack. The man's body is gone. He finishes his mask. Jason's POV. We see a black mask interior being put onto the screen as if we were putting it on ourselves. Caption: North Carolina. The silver Shamrock van is pulled over in the forest. Molly and Andy climb out. They look over in the forest. They look at the blood smear trail on the van. Stephanie sees it too. They're following us, Andy says. That was a mistake. Okay, Stephanie said, sorry, I didn't write that correctly. Sorry. Stephanie says, they're following us. Molly says, who's they? Andy says, we have a lot to talk about. Stephanie says, let's clean up the van first. She sees their cuts. You two sit tight in the van and I'll clean it. Molly asks if they have a first aid kit and insists she can take care of their cuts. Inside the van, Molly fixes up Andy's cuts. She inquires how they found her, what they wanted from her, etc. He tells her how he killed some people, same as her, and he thinks there's something or some people responsible for possibly brainwashing him and turning him into one. He has faint memories of them, but doesn't remember his killings at all. She admits she doesn't remember any of the killings either, but her life was perfectly normal until Angela got to her. He then says, "Who got to Angela, though?" He says, "The point is we are looking to find as many killers as possible to see if we can figure out who's behind this." Molly says, "What is Stephanie getting out of this?" Andy says, "It's a long story. The short of it is her stepdad was a killer, and I don't think it's any of my business divulging the rest." Stephanie says, "The rest of what?" Andy says, "The details of my crimes." Stephanie says, "Molly, are you okay with them in there?" Molly says, "Better him than Angela." Stephanie goes back to cleaning. She drags the dead body out of the car. Molly fixes up her own cut. Then Andy says, "There's one other thing I should tell you. It's your parents." Molly knows exactly what he's talking about and puts her head down. Molly asks, "Where are we going next?" Andy says, "Camp Crystal Lake, another summer camp." Caption: Camp Crystal Lake. We see a trashy family driving in the forest. Their car is packed and smells like cigarettes and shit. Well, it smells terrible. It doesn't literally smell like that. But, cigarettes, they ruin everything. They make everything smell terrible. So, the dad and mom are the trashiest people on the planet. Their son is just an innocent kid. They're going camping and they might be in the wrong place. The mom complains about this to her husband, which makes him yell at her. The son complains too. This infuriates the dad so much he warns him one more word. While driving, the son says one random thing and the mom says, "Uh-oh, he said one more word." The dad slams the car brakes and kicks his son out of the car. He tries beating him like usual. His son fights back. The dad tells him to run off. The mom surprisingly doesn't care. He gets back in the car and drives away, his son forever left behind. The son tries getting back to the car with no luck. He cries out. He's scared and alone. The son, Dean, is walking around in the woods. He's scared as hell. He sees a rabbit and gets briefly scared by it because he thinks it's something else. Then he thinks he sees someone watching him. There is. He gasps in horror and hides. Then he sees a hooded older man walking down the trail. He doesn't dare move a muscle. The man walks off. It's much later in the day. Dean is starving and scared. He approaches a small creek and sees splashes in the water. He looks up and realizes there's a transparent figure, a see-through figure standing in the creek, staring into space. Dean then sees the figure pick up a rock and he's about to throw it at him. Dean runs out of the way and leaves the creek. Dean sees the crystal lake and approaches it to look around for help. Any boats? He sits down in front of the water and goes to sleep. It's nighttime. He can't sleep. He wakes up and sees off into the distance a bulge in the water. The bulge moves closer and closer until a giant figure steps out. It's Jason, with his new mask on. He steps onto shore and looks down at Dean. He has no reaction to him and walks off. He sits there wondering who he is. Then he hears a noise. He sees the trees shaking and he hears the wind howling. He gets scared again. Dean gets up and follows Jason. Stephanie, Andy, and Molly enter a sleazy motel room. Before they can fully close the door, the manager says, and no threesomes allowed. They close the door. They're pretty worn down from the last two movies. Molly is depressed and worn down from the... Wait, and to herself. Okay, she's to herself. That wasn't written right either. After learning about her parents. Stephanie says, I did not want to scare you two, but I know who that crazy guy was. I've been doing some of my own research, mainly listening to true crime podcasts while I'm driving at night and you guys are asleep. Anyways, this hitchhiker bears quite a bit of resemblance to the serial killer known as Leatherface. He was a part of a cannibalistic killer family in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Andy says, that's just great. I'm sorry we put you through that, Molly. She says, it's all right. You didn't know. Andy and Stephanie are sleeping together. Andy says, Stephanie, is this really the life you want to live? Stephanie says, it's not what I wanted, but it's what I want now. That's the motto I always live by. She kisses him. They begin to have sex. We see Molly's sad face as she's turned on her side. She's still feeling alone, even though she's safe with them. She gets up and leaves the room, being uncomfortable by what they're doing in front of her. And really, they think she's asleep, so they don't really know. Molly walks around, seeing if she can find a way to preoccupy herself. She sees a vending machine and an ice bucket. While she stands there and stares at them, a creepy guy jumps out at her. He is someone on meth, possibly. Another hooded man. He says, you're doomed, bitch. You and your friends are fucking doomed. He starts laughing a wicked laugh. He holds up a switchblade. He chases her back to their room, and then she quickly gets back inside before he can get to her. Dean hurriedly follows along Jason as he stomps faster and faster to his shack. It's glowing like a jack-o'-lantern at night. He enters it and Dean follows him in there. Jason sits on his cot. Dean walks up to him with curiosity. He says, Mister, can you help me? I lost my parents. They got rid of me, actually. I don't know where to go. Jason looks up at him and stares. He says, please help me, sir. Jason ignores him. Dean walks out of the shack crying. He finds an abandoned construction vehicle and sleeps inside of it. He cries himself to sleep. Sleazy mom and dad are on the side of a trail. The dad is snorting cocaine off of the mom's ass. He cheers. Then she sits down and says, I think we should go back and get the little fucker. The sleazy dad says, nah, he needs us more than we need him. She says, fuck off with that fucking shit. And I did that on purpose for Rob Zombie dialogue. We're going back to get him now. He says, fine. He then throws a hissy fit, setting his cocaine down. He rubs some coke on his teeth. She rubs some on her teeth. They kiss. She says, the sleazy husband says, we can get him tomorrow. She says, yeah. He begins kissing her neck. She takes her shirt off and her boobs are out. He starts feeling one of them and making out with her. Then she sees something out of the corner of her eye. She stops him. Wait, I saw something. She covers her chest up. He says, oh, come on, what are you worrying about, an angry leprechaun? She goes back to making out with him. Then he gets out of the car and circles around to her door. She opens it and bends over. They start making love. Killer's POV. We see a killer watching this, Jason. They then move forward, holding a drill. Jason comes towards them. The sleazy mom is moaning and looking forward. While looking, she sees Jason's reflection in the window. She gasps. That's when she feels a pause. Then she hears a drilling sound. She turns around. Jason is drilling up her husband's nose while he screams. He then drills through his eyeball upward. He then pulls off a chunk of his face and inserts his fingers up inside of his skull. He pulls out his brain, ripping it from its stem. The man stops breathing and Jason throws him against a tree. He crushes the brain with one hand and looks down at the naked woman. He raises the drill and lunges forward. She quickly closes the car door with no success. Then she tries driving the car, only to have Jason already inside getting at her with the drill. He drills into the back of her shoulder. She screams loudly. Then she gets out of the car barely with her clothes in hand and runs off screaming. The next morning, Andy and Stephanie and Molly are eating breakfast. Molly complains about the situation. She says thinks they're nice people. What? God, I swear my phone is fucked up. It fucks me up when I'm fucking writing. These typos are inexcusable. She says she thinks they're nice, but she would like to leave. Andy insists it's too dangerous. She doesn't want them finding out she's alive. Well, they know she's alive, so that doesn't make sense. Well, okay, that was a mistake. I meant that they didn't want to find where she is if she ran off, and it's better to be in a group. God, these fucking typos. Stephanie inquires what's wrong. Molly talks about the guy telling her she and her friends are doomed. They both comfort her. Then Andy says, "You guys know what? I think we need a break. A vacation of sorts. It is Christmas soon, and we need to wait for Friday the 13th to be at Camp Crystal Lake." Stephanie and Molly have worried looks on their faces. Molly asks, "When's the next Friday the 13th? January, Stephanie says. Andy says, "Hey, don't be scared. It's 3 against 1. Jason's weakness is water. We're set." Foreboding music plays as we fly over Camp Crystal Lake. The sleazy mom runs down the main road. She can barely breathe. She's so scared. Suddenly, a gang of motorcycles come racing at her. They all screech to a halt when they see her casually walking in the road. She runs up to the leader of the group. He takes off his sunglasses and says, "Good day, ma'am. Get your pretty hands off my bike." She says, "Oh, sorry. You guys gotta help me." She starts putting on a fake crying act. "This huge man in a mask killed my husband and took our son, Dean." They go through the whole story. The leader says he'll take her into town and see if the police can do anything to help. He tells his men to set That'd be fucking hilarious. He tells his mom. He tells his men to set up camp in the forest. She gets on his motorcycle with him and rides off. They ride off together. Dean wakes up in the construction vehicle. He's so hungry. He goes and looks at the fish in the lake, wishing he could get one. Then he overturns a log and picks up worms and creepy crawlers. He reluctantly puts them into his mouth and eats them. Then he sees a pair of boots stop in front of him. He looks up at Jason. Jason ignores him and brushes past him. He gets up and begs for his help again and can't understand why he won't talk to him. Dean has been walking all day. He comes across what he thinks is his car. He's happy at first, but horrified to find his dead father and no sign of his mother. It's been vandalized somewhat. A squirrel is inside of it with a nut in its mouth. The car was left on the whole time, so it's drained of battery. Dean manages to get some food from the car and water and a fresh set of clothes. He starts feeling sad over the loss of his dad and mom, and then thinks to himself, what if I fell asleep in the car We crashed and I'm dead. He feels his face and starts hugging the car seat as if he's trying to figure out if he's really there or he's really in the spirit world. Stephanie and Andy and Molly watch the news. It talks about them being a 3-person serial killer team. Yolanda attests there was only one killer, but she might not have seen the other 2 killers helping Molly. Many other conspiracy theories are circulating. They turn off the television. Andy says, "We have to go right now." Molly says, "Conspiracy theories? How can what that woman said be considered a conspiracy theory?" Andy says, "That's how they get you. They already formed their narrative about what happened and what's going to happen. Any way that it ends up playing out, they'll twist it to suit their plans." Stephanie says, "That manager seemed rather nosy. You don't think?" Andy drops the suitcase and searches around. Stephanie drops her things and looks around too. Andy finds a spy bug inside the Bible in the table, a reference to the X-Files Lone Gunman episode. Molly looks out the window and says, "We should get a move on before he gets the police." They all 3 rush outside. When they're entering the van, they find the creepy man who said they were doomed. He's dead on their front seat. They go, "What the F?" and throw him out of the van. He has blood smeared all over him, but no wound anywhere, and a weapon which Stephanie touches and tosses out with his body. They drive away, and then Molly says, "He moved." They look and see no movement, but it's like he's acting. And so that is an actor, by the way. Well, I'll probably, I don't know if I'll reveal it in the next movie, but I never mentioned this again, and so I think probably I should just tell you that he is an actor, and basically he was already there to spy on them, so he wasn't some random meth head. The head biker and the sleazy wife are in front of the sheriff's station. They go in there and are given the runaround by the sheriff. He says people go missing around there all the time. He really gets uptight when they mention guy with hockey mask. He also says they just had an entire construction crew vanish from sight. All that was found was their vehicles and some tools. But if they see anything, they'll give them a call. The sleazy wife puts on a fake crying act again. The head biker seems legitimately concerned. Outside the sheriff's station, he tells her they're going to find her son themselves, no matter how long it takes. The sleazy wife asks him what his name is. He says, "They call me Peter Pan, because my friends say I've looked the same since the day they met me." They then look over and see a Jason Voorhees museum. They wander to it and are immediately met with a Crazy Ralph animatronic, telling them that they're doomed. There's a death curse. They go inside to a really cool Jason museum where it seems like they're skimping out on important facts of the cases. How many people died, who died, how did they die? Very weird. But they're learning about Jason and who he was supposedly. There's an obsessed fan that goes, "This isn't right. Tommy never killed himself." They move through the museum and are surprised at how celebrated the killer is. The sleazy wife asks to leave because she just can't stand it. They leave. The dean is still sitting in that car. He gets up and wanders around the forest. It feels like he's going in circles. Eventually, he comes across the hooded man again. This time, he brought 2 friends with him. They spot the boy and begin chasing him. They say nasty things as they're coming after him. Then Jason steps out from behind a tree and slashes at one of them in the back with his machete. He slashes and slashes while the 2 others freak out, continuing to run fast toward the creeps. Jason pauses and then disappears. He appears right in front of another sidekick and grabs his throat, strangling him to death. Then he smashes his head against a tree until it gets to pieces. Finally, he follows on after the main creep, the main bad guy. The guy is pretty scared, even though he was already a threatening presence in the forest. He then looks back too often while chasing him and picks him up. He looks back too often while chasing the boy and trips over a flurry of rocks. Jason approaches him and picks him up so he's kneeling. He presses him down until his knees break. Then he bends back both of his arms until they're broken too. He uses the opportunity to hold back his hair and hack off his face in one slash. So he hacks it downward, kind of like in the Sleepaway Camp pitch where she slashes that girl's face with the mandolin. But this is like he just slashes it off in one thing. He lets him fall over dying. He continuously slashes him over and over. Dean runs away still because of how scared he is. And so just so you guys know, I did base that hooded guy off of a real killer who hasn't been caught. I won't say who it is or where they or supposedly are, but I thought this is what I would like to have happen to them. So Jason's kind of cool in the script. Like he's just. I kind of was like, I'm gonna have him just kill everyone, kill everyone, and just I don't know. It's a lot of fun when you have a character who can just kill everyone in sight. He reaches one of the cabins at Camp Crystal Lake and hides inside it. It's since decayed heavily. There's vandalism, blood-painted symbols. It looks gross. He hides in a closet where there's mirrors all over the walls. Stephanie and Andy and Molly find a shady mechanic in the middle of nowhere to change the look of their van. His TV is broken or too old to use. So they think they're safe for that time. They have him paint a red good guys on their van on the color yellow for the whole thing. He says, "You guys collect good guy dolls?" He shows them a messed up good guy doll he has. He gives it to them and then they play along together. Yeah, they pretend they're vintage toy collectors. Wink, wink. After their van is fixed, Stephanie says, "We need disguises. Hiding in plain sight isn't going to do it anymore." Andy says, "Halloween store it is." Molly says, "How about the thrift shop? Everything is there, cheaper, and you buy everything in bulk. I used to go there to put outfits together." And so I'm talking about the bins, the Goodwill bins. In the Goodwill bins, they find some cool stuff in the bins. Molly takes the lead. She asks Andy, how did he dress usually? Andy says, "I used to go in hiking outfits. I had to be outdoors a lot, so khakis, plaid shirts, a lot of souvenir shirts from different places I visited." Molly says, "Then you have to break the mold. Wear t-shirts with open button shirts. Wear turtlenecks. Wear workout clothes. Your disguises can't just cover your face." He nods along and looks. She says, "Stephanie, you next." Stephanie says, "Molly, I appreciate your help and all, but don't you think someone's gonna. She says, "Oh no, that's one of the reasons I started shopping here. The crummy girls at my school were never around, and everybody here minds their own business." Andy is in the bathroom changing his clothes. He takes a razor blade and cuts a scar across his nose. Then he gives himself only a mustache. He looks very different, to say the least. Very 80s and flashy neon workout clothes. Molly has an 80s style goth outfit on. She then puts on a multicolored wig. Stephanie is the last one to change. She looks into the mirror, the scene very much a parallel to the stepfather changing disguises. She takes out her iconic hairband and tosses it in the trash. Molly cuts her hair and shapes it into an Audrey Hepburn tomboy-style haircut. We see flashes of the stepfather in the mirror every time a piece of hair cuts. Then Stephanie puts on bright makeup, the brightest, flashiest colors imaginable. She is wearing a fuzzy striped sweater and black jeans. Another 80s look. Then she still isn't convinced. She tells Molly to hit her in the face. Molly complies and gives her a black eye. We see the trio walking down the street looking totally different. They walk up a hill at sunset with black trash bags. It's their old clothes. They look like the Halloween 3 poster of the kids walking while they walk up the hill. Then at the top, they throw their clothes into the ocean. Caption, January 12th, 2023. 8 kids stand in a circle in the high school hallway. 9 kids, actually, sorry. They all look like outcasts. They talk and agree about meeting to do something at Camp Crystal Lake on the 13th. We see Dean sitting in the cabin. He's no longer acting like a child. He doesn't look like one either. He looks like People Under the Stairs kids. He has drawn meaningless pictures on the wall, caveman-style pictures. Underneath them, he has someone at the door. Oh wait, underneath them, there are slashes for the amount of days he's been there. He sees someone at the door, a horned figure. It's a goat-man creature. It walks inside the house. Dean sits there undisturbed. He's learned to live with the horrors of Camp Crystal Lake. Dean checks a homemade trap he set up. A fresh rabbit is inside of it. He retrieves it and starts eating, blood dripping from his mouth. Stephanie and Andy and Molly enter Cunningham County, New Jersey. They still seem the same for the most part, character-wise. Stephanie rolls herself a joint. She smokes it. Stephanie says, "Does anyone want a hit?" Andy gets it and smokes from it. Molly even reaches for a hit. She coughs. Suddenly, a motorcycle comes roaring for their van. They ride up on their bumpers. Andy yells at them to pass. They ignore him. Andy eventually pulls off to the side. The motorcycle zooms past them and turns into the forest. Molly says, "What was that about?" The motorcycle gang has finally set up camp at this point. They have tents up, they have grills, they have fires, they have music. 2 motorcycle gang members come in with a hulking figure, Leatherface. They introduce him to Peter Pan, who asks him what he's good at doing. Naturally, he picks up a chainsaw they have and starts sawing up wood for campfires. Peter Pan goes into the main tent and finds the sleazy wife fully donned in motorcycle clothes. And actually, what I kind of wanted her to look like, what I pictured her as, was, in those old, like, Western movies, you have, like, the woman in, like, the red dress with the corset and the hat. I kind of wanted her to look like that, to have, like, a Western style motorcycle / like Western goth outfit, if that makes any sense. I could probably find a picture, I probably will. He tells her, "No sign of your son, ma'am. This forest keeps playing tricks on our men. We've been spending more time finding them than we have finding your boy. I'm sorry, we'll keep looking. I promised you." She says, "Jesus, I told you exactly where we were, and how long has it been? A month? My boy is out there. He's suffering. He's Peter Pan says, we'll pull an all-nighter tonight and tomorrow. If he turns up, or this Jason does, I will let you know. Is there anything else you want? She says, fine. I'd like a glazed donut. And a jelly one, too. And a pack of cigarettes. And a large coffee. And a chocolate donut, too. He says, fine. Oh yeah, we got another new recruit out here. You should meet him. Come and meet him. He's the size of Texas. Jason walks into his shack. He kneels down in front of his mother's head. It awakens and she says, they're all coming, Jason. They want to take you away from me. They want to hurt you like they did when they drowned you all those years ago. Well, I want you to lead them to the lake and drown them all like rats. Do whatever you can to kill them. Don't let them escape. Do you hear me? We see the sun set. Stephanie and Andy and Molly drive into the forest. We see in the back an arsenal of weapons, meat hooks hanging from the ceiling. They came prepared this time. Stephanie says, I hope we get him in time before another massacre is committed. Andy says, unfortunately, I think one will happen anyway. You don't get it. It's like a cycle. Killing of some kind has to happen. Why do you think Jerry took Sharon and killed his own family and her? Those were replacement killings for my not doing you and your family. Jerry and myself. Stephanie says, please don't ever call my daughter a replacement killing ever again. He says, I'm sorry. Molly says, wait, so that's what happened? I didn't know. Stephanie says, it's all right. Focus on the task at hand. Please double check our night vision goggles. Andy, I swiped a map from that goofy museum in town. Ready for the directions? Andy says, ready. The biker gang is sitting around a campfire. Peter Pan calls on Big Man to come join them. He sits down at the fire next to Sleazy Wife. She's slightly frightened of him. Peter Pan passes around sausage and sauerkraut and beans. Leatherface gets a plate, too. Then Peter Pan says, we need to bow our heads now. Everyone does. He says, Dear Lord Julie Cruz, you graced this world with rock and roll. You left this world with a face still like a doll. You give us the only sustenance we truly need in your music, so we appreciate this extra bounty of deliciousness. Oh, holy lady, may you guide us through the forest and help us find Jason Voorhees and the boy he stole from his sweet, beautiful mother. Into the night we go, knowing you'll always be with us. Thank you. Amen. They start eating. Sleazy Wife says, Hey, new guy, what's your real name? He looks at her. A biker says, She asked you a question. What's your name? You look like Dumbo and act like a dipshit, so what is it, dipshit or Dumbo? Biker 2 says, Yeah, what's your Dumbo nickname, dipshit? Leatherface just eats. Sleazy Wife says, Is he deaf? Biker 3 says, I don't know, let's test him. Everyone on the count of 3, roast this ugly piece of shit. If he's not deaf, he'll fight with one of us and like a man. If he's deaf, we'll laugh at him and turn him into the state home for the ugly. And that's a reference to Garbage Pail Kids. I just like to sneak these references in, and it's like, I just wonder who would have gotten that if I didn't say anything. Whoops, I didn't count down yet. Peter Pan is getting mad. He says, Simmer down, fellas. It's not worth it. Biker 4 says, "You know, I have struggled with the definition of ugly my entire life. The chicks we thought was ugly, they weren't ugly. I don't know what the fuck ugly means. But then I saw this new guy and I knew the answer to that problem real fast." Biker 5 says, "They say in a biker club if you can't ride good, you can help set up camp. If you can't help set up camp, you're going to be chopping up firewood like this loser over here." Biker 1 says, "So which issue does this guy have? Mommy issues or daddy issues? I'm leaning in on brother issues." Sleazy Wife says, "What about cousin issues?" Biker 7 says, "After seeing his face, Jason Voorhees isn't the one who needs a hockey mask." Peter Pan stands up and yells, "Enough! Drop it! We are all brothers and sisters here, even if his face looks like something that came right out of my ass. A lot of you seem to forget where you came from, who you were, and what was entailed in your journeys here. Luther, you are the fattest kid in school. No bitch would touch you until I paid for him to. Earl, you robbed poor people's houses for drugs until I got you off of them and got you onto the good path of being a biker." And no, I was not taking these lines seriously, obviously. "Winston, you killed someone. And until I got you off of the... Wait. It was an accident, but still, who helped cover it up and get away from that mess? My point is, all of us have problems, and we don't need to be pointing out someone else's for him. So show some fucking respect." Sleazy Wife says, "Why don't we put him to good use and send him out tonight?" Peter Pan says, "Good idea. Now tonight I don't want anybody getting lost. If you find them or not, we will talk about it. But please do not get lost again." Leatherface stands up. He hulks over to his chainsaw, and Peter says, "You want to take that thing with you, big man?" "Okay, I hope the gas doesn't run out." Dean actively follows Jason around. He watches as Jason retrieves weapons from hidden spots, and then stores them in his shed. Then he sees Jason setting traps in the abandoned camp. Finally, he sees Jason prepping a bulldozer and building it into an armored badass of a machine, very similar to the real-life Killdozer, which could withstand gunfire and explosions somewhat. When he finishes, he begins walking into the forest. Stephanie and Andy and Molly sit in the van. Molly asks, "What do we do?" Andy says, "We wait for him to come to us. This forest is too big. If we run around looking for him, we're going to get lost and end up killing ourselves. Or accidentally killing each other." Leatherface follows behind the bikers, including Peter Pan, walking through the forest. Peter Pan yells, "Jason! Jason! Jason! Jason!" a reference to Heavy Rain, the video game. Leatherface actually wanders off. He becomes infatuated with Crystal Lake. He sees something inside of it. The bikers continue walking. Jason stands there in the forest on the other side of the lake, watching over everything. The three bikers continue searching. The one on the right fires his shotgun at an animal. He says sorry to his boss. That's when they turn around and realize Leatherface is not there. Peter says, "God damn it, I put all my faith into that boy. I guess he really is Dumbo." He raises his walkie-talkie on, only to find its signal is jammed. He huffs and puffs. They soon come across the sleazy dad's corpse and the car. After that, they start noticing the changes in the forest. It's almost like the forest opens itself up when it wants you to find something and closes itself when it doesn't want you to. The bikers are scared. They see two shiny lights. Is it the bulldozer? They run towards the lights. Peter Pan raises his pistol. They find the good guy's van. Peter Pan yells, "Hey, what do we got here? You guys a bunch of kidnappers or what? Get out of the fucking van." They don't get out. "You think I'm playing?" He shoots a tree. "Get out now." A big van. How original. What's next? Free candy? Stephanie and Andy are like, what the fuck? He has his men tie their hands with twine. Then he circles around and ties Molly's hands. That's when he opens up the van door and is horrified. Oh my god, it's a fucking torture van. Molly tells Peter Pan, this is all a misunderstanding. Peter says, I don't think so. There's nothing to misinterpret here at all. Stephanie says, what do you want from us? The three bikers haul them in. The three of them are kneeled down on the ground in front of a sleazy wife. The sleazy wife. Hoods over their heads are taken off. She looks down at them. Peter Pan says, there's been a development, ma'am. Have you ever seen these three people before he got lost? She looks at them and says, no, not at all. I would have mentioned three people walking around dressed up like the Neon Breakfast Club. Peter Pan says, are you sure? She walks up to him and says, don't ever fucking question if I'm sure about something again. He backs off and then has his biker right hand show her pictures of the van and what's inside. See, what they did was they lured him in by painting their van the logo of an old children's toy. They promise you a doll, of which they only have one shitty one. Then you go inside and boom, you're met with countless hours of pain and suffering. Sleazy wife asks them, what do you guys have to say? Stephanie says, we don't know what you think we did or who you think we are. We just got here. We're looking for someone ourselves, and we needed this equipment for... Andy says, you guys have heard of Jason Voorhees, right? We're looking for him. We want to capture him. Peter Pan says, Jason? Is this who you're looking for? Not innocent little boys? Molly says, sir, if you just took 1 minute to search our van, you'd see the plans are all right there. The notes, the articles, you can take a look with us and then let us go if it's true. Sleazy wife says, good, yeah, go do that, Peter. Jesus. This was a waste of a night. And where in the hell is that big guy at? Peter Pan says, he got lost. She says, make sure he gets back here so he can face me for one-on-one chats. A one-on-one chat. They leave with the three prisoners. Peter Pan and his men take them to their van. Andy says, so what were you guys looking for exactly? Maybe we could help. If we see anything, we'll let you know. Peter says, none of your fucking business. They search the van and find the articles and notes extremely quickly. Peter Pan says, let them go. But he yells, if I ever see you again talking to a child and bringing him into your van, or I just see you in general looking suspicious around here, I am going to bring a rain of hellfire upon you, down on you. So he's going to bring a rain of hellfire on them. Got it. Understood? They all nod along. The bikers take their guns out of their faces and they go back in the van. Leatherface is back at camp. Sleazy wife walks up to him and says, where were you? Where the fuck were you? She comes up and pushes on him. We told you not to get lost, and what did you do? She starts beating on him. He groans and makes animalistic noises as he runs into the main tent. She runs in there beating him and yelling at him. Peter Pan and his men get back. They have the most worried looks on their faces like, really? We didn't find him yet? Caption: Friday the 13th. Dean wakes up and smells the campfires from last night. He walks around aimlessly like a zombie. Finally, he sees his mother in the forest. She stares right at him. He is in a trance-like state. She ignores him and says, "I hope one day I find my son. Never had a better boy than him. No." He is still in the trance. She raises her walkie-talkie and says, "Start searching." Peter Pan responds and says, "Ma'am, can you meet me in the main tent?" She says, "Sure." She continuously looks into her son's eyes. Not a care in the world she actually found him. She walks away from him. He aimlessly moves about and disappears into the forest again. So basically, if your guys are confused, she's going crazy, or she already is crazy. So I'm gonna try and finish this, but it is 9:30, so I don't know. Stephanie and Andy and Molly sit in the back of the van after waking up from their sleep. Andy says, "I know I said we had to sit here, but as long as those bikers know where we are, we're no more safe in here than out there. Suppose one of them encounters Jason." He thinks, I'm going to run to one of those guys in the van and let them take care of it. Meanwhile, we're caught off guard and slashed upon arrival. Molly says, "I agree. Stephanie, where should we go? You have the map." Stephanie looks at it. She is worried. Okay, Jason's shack is it not the most obvious place to search on Earth? Or have those bikers been on too much meth? They all gear up and head out into the forest. We return to the 9 high school students finally. They are driving on the road with camping gear on both vehicles. In one car, the 5 girls. In one car, the 4 guys. All of them could be lumped into the same goth stereotype. But they're nothing like their appearance. As for the guys, you have Kramer, the geek, Michael, the gamer, Freddy, the Dungeons and Dragons player, and Dracula, the weirdo. As for the girls, you have Sally, the virgin, Lori, the smarty pants, Nancy, the theater geek, Mina, the Japanese foreign exchange student, and Amanda, the blonde bombshell. The only catch with Amanda is she needs a motorized wheelchair. They discuss the usual, how shitty everything is. Dracula practices lines he's listening to from an audiobook on how to romance a girl. Nancy talks about how irritated she was listening to people in her school talk about prom all day long, how all they could do was say how their parents rented them a helicopter, their parents rented them this, rented them that. Then we find out the truth. They're going to Camp Crystal Lake to throw an anti-prom party. It explains why they're all dressed up in suits and cool gothic dresses. Michael, who's driving, turns on the radio to a station where the song Africa is playing. We see them driving along. The song continued. Montage. As the song plays, we fly over Camp Crystal Lake and its vastness. Then we see vantage points of all over the camp. We see Dean walking aimlessly. We see the bikers searching the forests. We see the good guy searching the forests. We see the sleazy wife smoking a cigarette and eating donuts. We see Leatherface chopping up venison and hanging up hides. His mask is securely on his face. And it's like, I don't know. I just think I wanted Leatherface to get a new mask, but I just couldn't find any place where it would seem natural. So, probably, yeah. It just wasn't natural. So he was always going to have this mask on that he had at the end of last movie. So I'm just saying, like, if I would have found some place to put that naturally, I would have had him get a new mask. Finally, we see Jason overlooking the entire area on a tall mountain top. He can see everything and everyone. The sun is going down. The teenagers arrive at the dilapidated Camp Crystal Lake. Everyone gets out and is for some reason more cheerful than you'd expect. They all help each other bring in groceries. But surprisingly, there's no suitcases or anything. They also get out candles and pink Halloween lights. They enter into a random cabin. Lastly, they put Amanda in her wheelchair. Inside the cabin, Laurie says, "We'll eat here, then we spread out wherever, and when the mood is full, we will go out and dance." Dracula and Freddy go into another room to look around. Dracula says, "Do you think it'll work?" Freddy says, "It has to. It wouldn't be right if it didn't. Don't worry about this, man. We got you covered. Everybody will know." Sally helps Nancy put up candles on the table. There's already a cup on the table mysteriously. Nancy places down horror-themed cups and plates and napkins. Amanda looks out the window and says, "Can someone come with me down to the lake? I want to see it. For real. I bet it's not even like in the pictures online." Mina offers too. They leave. Kramer and Michael flirt with the other girls. They seem a lot more amenable than you'd expect. Mina goes down to the lake with Amanda. They look out at the view. Amanda is in total awe. Wow, just think they want to tear this all down. Mina goes, "What?" Amanda says, "Yeah, I saw some construction flags on the way here. What do you think they'll build on top of this?" Mina says, "Maybe a frozen yogurt place?" Amanda says, "A frozen yogurt place? In the middle of a big forest? Nah. They'll build a giant mall. Right on top of us. Suppose we're in the food court here, having lunch." Dracula looks outside at Amanda and Mina with a passionate, sad gaze. Freddy tells him, "Hey, Chick said dinner in 20. Dracula nods. Dean wanders back to the camp when all of a sudden he sees the teenagers there. He hums to himself a sad song and walks away like he thinks they took his home from him. Peter Pan and his men search the forest. Peter says, "How long till we reach Pack-a-Snack Lodge?" One biker says, "Shouldn't be too far." Peter says, "Better not be. Men, ready the gear." His men take out chains, barbed wire, rope, railroad spikes, and hammers. The good guys approach a cliff overlooking the lake. They see Mina and Amanda. "There's people here. We need to hurry before someone gets hurt." Andy says, "It'll take us an hour to get down there." Molly says, "You two go on ahead. If I see something, I'll signal you." She takes out a flare gun. The teenagers sit down at the table to eat. Kramer says, "What we have here is the greatest feast at Camp Crystal Lake anyone has ever had. Ice cream sandwiches, fried chicken, mashed potatoes and gravy, corn, biscuits, pancakes, bacon, spaghetti, crab legs, popcorn, nachos, and of course, lots of booze, specifically champagne." Freddy winks at Dracula as he gets to sit next to Amanda. Everyone seems really happy. They all try to speak at once, not knowing who should lead. Kramer says, "Let's just go one at a time in alphabetical order." Amanda says, It's an honor to be considered for prom queen, but I'm afraid I would prefer a witch's hat instead of a stupid tiara. Anyways, I think what I'll miss most is seeing you guys at lunch every day." Dracula says, I think what I'll miss most is, he looks at Amanda, breadstick day. I think what I won't miss most is everyone calling me Dracula because my name is Drake and I like watching vampire movies. He starts to burst under the pressure and shed tears. He gets up suddenly and runs into a bedroom. When everyone wants to get up and help him, Freddy calms them down. He says, everybody, don't worry about that. He'll be fine, I'm sure. Actually, Amanda, do you think you'd like to go and talk to him? Amanda says, really? Sure, not a problem. She motors herself into the bedroom. That sounds like a funny visual. Freddy grins briefly and then says, what I'm most thankful for is helping my best friend get laid. He nods his head. Yeah, he's been crushing on Amanda for years. I hope you guys don't mind. They don't. Kramer says, I'm most thankful for not having to see another X-Files revival. Hopefully, I definitely won't miss the hazing, though. The name-calling, the daily humiliation. I fucking hate those guys. I always will. Lori says, I'm most thankful for not having to deal with my shithead brother anymore. I don't need to get into him. You guys already know. It's just, why did he have to be like that? Mina comforts Lori. Mina says, I'm most thankful I won't be going home to Japan. I'd much prefer to live here with you guys, fellow horror fans. Nancy says, I'm most thankful I won't have to deal with Mr. Molester himself, the theater teacher. He made me do so many things I didn't want to do for stupid little plays. Sally says, wow, I'm last. Okay, no pressure. I'm most thankful I won't get called a slut all the time anymore, even though I'm not. I'm a virgin. I don't mind very much I'm going to die as one. Although I kind of wished. Kramer says, Sally, after dinner, would you like to do it? Sally says, what? Kramer says, you don't have to, I just wanted to offer. Sally says, okay. They start eating, too nervous to talk anymore. Mina says, hey, did anyone put this cup here? They tell her no. She says, I wonder if it has a year on it, and picks it up. When she picks it up, a trap triggers from under the cup, causing an arrow to shoot her in the throat. She falls over dead, blood going everywhere. Everyone smiles and claps, continuing eating. Kramer says, Mina went out first. I didn't expect that. He takes a bite of chicken. We see Jason stalking their camp. He's walking around the premises. Dracula admits to Amanda he's always liked her. Amanda admits she has too. But she thought there wouldn't be enough time to get into a relationship before they all let Jason kill them at Camp Crystal Lake. So yeah, they all came there to have a party and for Jason to kill them. Yeah. Dracula tells her there isn't time, but when you want something and you really want it, you'll do it even if there's no time left at all. Amanda starts kissing him. He kisses her. He says, can I put you into bed? She says yes. He picks her up and puts her in. She takes her shirt off and they begin to make love. That's when we see Jason's shadow at the window. The teenagers finish eating. Lori says, should we have Dracula and Amanda come in and have dinner? Freddy says, no, don't. Kramer says, well then, dinner is done. We all should spread out. Sally, come with me. When they all stand up at the table, they say goodbye to each other. Freddy walks past the love room and outside. He goes to a cabin nearby. When he opens the door, 4 bear traps fly against him, shredding open his arms, legs, and head. The only thing that's left is torso. Lori sets a boombox on the dinner table. She puts it on max volume. Dracula hears the music and says, "They ate already. Are you hungry? We can stop." Amanda says, "No, stay here. We can try to die together." They go back to making love. Amanda looks up and sees Jason. She says, "Oh my God, it's happening." He says, "You're coming?" Jason raises his fist, and then punches through his chest. He rips out Dracula's heart. Then he punches through Amanda's chest, through his chest hole with his left hand. He then grabs her heart and skewers both of them on a stick. He sticks the heart skewer in the fireplace next to them, which they had lit too. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that fireplace thing because I was going to put that there, but at first I thought that he would do something else with it, so just wanted to make sure that you guys knew that he did light the fireplace. Stephanie and Andy are losing breath. Stephanie says, "Andy, slow down. I hear music down there. You think any bad has happened?" He slows down. They regroup. Andy says, "We can do this." She says, "I know." Andy says, "No, we can." He puts his hand on her shoulder. She takes a swig of water. "I know." He takes a drink too. They get back to running. Peter Pan and his men are getting tired too. They're at the lodge, Packernack Lodge. That's when they see Dean. He spots them and gets spooked. They ask him to come to them. He runs. They run after him. While running, Peter says, found your son. He's alive," on the radio. On the walkie-talkie, I mean. The sleazy wife warns the entire camp. She says if they go there on their bikes, they can get there fast. Leatherface picks up his chainsaw and follows along after the sleazy wife yells at him that he's a part of their family, and he's not treating them like family. He brings his chainsaw, of course. Nancy walks up to a mirror. It's fully there, surprisingly. No cracks at all. She takes off her makeup. "Tonight I'll be playing the role of myself." She stares into the mirror. That's when it cracks and breaks. As soon as it cracks open, Jason is standing behind her. He grabs her head and snaps it off of her body. Then he hits it against the mirror until it's fully broken and no shards are left. He leaves her head in the sink. Then he takes the mirror down and stands there as if he's happier when there isn't a mirror at all. Sally and Kramer are beginning to have sex in the mess hall. She's really scared, but she does it anyway since she knows she's going to die. They're on top of a table. That's when she looks over and sees Jason at the window once again. She smiles. Kramer finishes. Before they know it, Jason slashes a rope on the side of the building, causing the chandelier to fall and impale Kramer through his back. Sally rolls off of the table accidentally. She breathes heavily. Jason walks into the mess hall and brings his trusty machete. She says, "Wait a second, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die." She screams at the top of her lungs and crawls backwards. He stomps to her and picks her up by her hair and drags her to another table. There, he places her on top and slashes somewhat down her entire front of her body. Then he grabs her foot and pulls up his mask. He takes a big bite out of her toes, ripping off some and chewing them fully and swallowing them whole. She screams in horror. He grins and puts his mask back on. Then he turns her on her back and slashes her in half there too. Finally, he picks her up and rips her in half himself. Then he hangs up her body as if he's going to come back later and cook parts of her. Or just eat her raw. Lori isn't doing what everyone thought she would. She hears her friend screaming and rushes to a boat at the dock. She starts rehearsing lines. I can't believe my friends are dead. They're all dead? What? $1 million for a movie deal? That would be horribly insensitive. And I'll take it. She gets in the boat and starts it up. She goes to the center of the lake where all of a sudden it stops and her boat is grabbed from underneath. Jason pulls her boat back to shore with the chain that he attached to it. When she tries to climb out, he picks her up and carries her. She fights him with him a lot. He then sees a flare shoot up into the sky. He teleports to Molly and dangles Lori over the top of the cliff. She gasps and falls back, not expecting him to show up there. He tries to figure out who she is. He picks her up by her throat while still dangling Lori over the cliff. Then he hears, Jason! Dean! She tells him, don't kill Jason, don't kill her. He looks over and drops Molly on the ground. Then he breaks Lori's arms and legs and lets her go. But not before he kicks her a little bit to the right, making her fall off the cliff and stumble off. She brutally hits every rock on the way down. He looks at Molly and then around as if he expected more people with her. He starts walking down fast on the trail to get Stephanie and Andy. Peter Pan and his men lose Dean. Peter Pan says plan B, follow the music. Kid could run to the music too. They run back in the way they came. Stephanie and Andy are running fast. They hear ma, 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 and speed up. Soon they reach the camp. They are shocked at what they see. They see the kids' ghosts dancing with each other. They're surrounded by pink Halloween lights, basically like in the middle of the camp. Jason catches up to them but is immediately entranced by the kids' ghosts. He walks towards them. Stephanie and Andy stand there wondering what to do. Jason, huffing and puffing, sits down in front of the group dancing. They're all happy and can't see Jason at all. Stephanie and Andy stay back. The song Forever Young comes on. He sits there watching them dance and sets down his machete. Then he feels a chain wrap around his neck. The ghosts are gone. Or maybe they were only visible to Stephanie, Andy, and Jason. The biker gang grabs him from all sides with rope and chains. They drag him off the bench and strangle him with the chain. They take him out of the camp. Stephanie and Andy don't know what to do. Peter Pan gets on his walkie-talkie and says, "Hey, we got Jason. He's wrapped up and ready for you when you are. Get down here, quick." She says, "Already on my way." Peter Pan has his men place Jason against the set of 3 trees Paul passed at the beginning of the movie. They pound railroad spikes into his body, nailing him to the tree. Then they pound spikes into his legs and arms and choke up with the chain, wrapping it around the tree. Finally, they wrap barbed wire around him. Peter Pan starts giving a speech to Jason, telling him how bad he is and how good Peter Pan is. Jason tries breaking free, but he doesn't think he can. He gives up. Peter Pan then punches Jason's mask, only to break a finger against it. He tells his men to choke him more because he made him break his finger. 2 men there use the rope tied around his neck to choke him continuously. He then says, "And what's up with that music? Are you celebrating all those lives you took, you sick fuck?" Jason's point of view. We see him losing vision just like Paul at the beginning of the movie. He blacks out. Flashback. We see Jason drowning in camp in Crystal Lake. The bullies laugh at him. He passes out. We see him wake up at a shore away from camp and he gets out of the lake. He is very weak. He walks around the forest. He gets scared. It's getting dark. He starts running. Pretty soon it's pitch black. That's when he runs into his mother, Pamela Voorhees. He runs right into her and falls down. She turns to him for a second. Then she says hello to him. Is he a ghost? Jason is confused. He keeps saying, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." She says, "I've never seen a ghost out here before. You're my first." She's crazy. She walks away from him, ignoring him. He gets up and keeps screaming, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." She ignores him. He runs to her and pounds his fists on her back. She ignores him, letting him fall back on the ground. She doesn't ever turn to look back at him either. Jason keeps screaming, "Mommy, Mommy." We then see young Jason setting traps for rabbits, slashing notches into trees, doing all the things Dean did. Finally, we see him put on the Part 2 potato sack. He feels strong. He encounters a couple and kills them, stabbing them over and over. He stands up and feels more alive than ever. Jason wakes up in the present time. He tears his hands off of the spikes and uses the rope to wrap around the two bikers' heads and whip them against the trees until they're dead. Peter Pan and his men take out their guns and start shooting him. He rips off his chains and is immediately shot at. He doesn't care. He runs at one of them and beats them with his own gun. Then Peter Pan punching him again. Jason grabs his hand and uses his own arm to punch himself over and over until his hand breaks and his jaw breaks. Jason then rips his throat and lets the blood squirt out as he falls to the ground. Finally, he lets the other biker finish shooting at him. He runs out of ammo. Jason picks up a railroad spike and wraps it in a chain. Then he throws it at the biker, stabbing him in the crotch and using the chain to rip him down to a slam on the ground. He walks up to his body and strangles him with the chain until his head rips off from his body. He walks away from the scene, stronger than ever. Stephanie and Andy are checking on the bodies at the camp to see if anyone's alive. Molly quickly joins them. She says, "I heard the screaming. What's going on?" Andy says, "Those douchebags just pissed him off a whole hell of a lot more." That's what. Stephanie says, "This might be a big mistake coming here." Sleazy wife says, well, you guys again?" She has the bikers raise their guns at the trio. Leatherface sees them and gets pissed. Sleazy wife holds him off. Andy says, "You guys are being picked off. You need to hurry and help them before they all get killed, all your friends." She says, "Peter said if we ever saw you again, we had to shoot you." "Boys?" They scream, "No!" That's when they see a light and a shadow figure pop up in the window of a cabin. She says, "It's Jason, shoot him." They shoot at the figure. We see the supposed figure. It's a scarecrow. Jason Voorhees rides in the armored bulldozer. Sleazy wife tells them to shoot at him. The bulldozer drives at them fast and runs them over one by one. Andy and Stephanie and Molly run away. The sleazy wife stands by as the bikers get senselessly killed. He kills every last one of them, running them over and crushing their bodies. Finally, he gets out of the bulldozer and sleazy wife stands behind Leatherface. She says, "You're up." She kicks him. Leatherface starts his chainsaw, a thirst for blood in his eyes. Jason stands there and looks at him for a second. He then tosses his machete at the sleazy wife, chopping off her left arm. Leatherface is distracted. Jason runs up to him and uses a railroad spike to gouge out Leatherface's right eye. Leatherface quickly turns around to face Jason and slashes his saw at him. He slashes and slashes, missing every slash right after the first one. Stephanie says, "We have to do something, Andy. We have to." They don't know what to do. Sleazy wife cheers on Leatherface like a hyena, holding up her one arm. Leatherface lunges at Jason, but then his saw runs out of gas. He freezes and his eyes get wide. He backs away from Jason. Jason picks up his machete and points it at Leatherface like he's saying, "You're about to die." Leatherface backs up towards the lake, falling down into the water. He stands up. We see a mysterious mermaid in the lake. She raises a magical dagger towards the sky and lets out a terrifying ghostly scream. Then Leatherface's chainsaw is struck by a bolt of lightning. It powers up and turns on. The sky begins raining with drops of blood, a rain of hellfire. Leatherface spins around like in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 trailer and impales Jason with his chainsaw, running it into his stomach. He drops Jason down on the ground. There, Jason takes a minute to recover. Leatherface is about to stab him again when Jason slashes his Achilles heel open. Leatherface stumbles and Jason springs up. Leatherface then slashes at him as he stands up. Jason grabs his chainsaw with both hands and overpowers him, turning the saw backwards. Leatherface falls to the ground and grabs Jason's machete. He stands at Jason while he slashes at him with his chainsaw. Leatherface slashes at the chainsaw, which makes Jason lift the saw up and slash open his mask. Parts of his mask tear off. Leatherface slashes off Leatherface slashes off Jason's front of his right foot. He stands up at a stumbling Jason and slashes his arms and legs and everything with the chainsaw. Jason becomes even angrier and lunges forward at Leatherface. He grabs Leatherface and shoves his chainsaw down his throat. He watches it buzz around in his stomach and slash around until it completely comes out again. Blood goes everywhere. Jason takes a breath, and then he uses the chainsaw to slash open Leatherface's face, revealing the mask falling off onto the chainsaw. He sets the chainsaw down. He looks at the sleazy wife. Sleazy wife is panicking. She starts running away. Stephanie and Andy catch her in her tracks. She fights with them. Molly punches her. They all three deliver her to Jason as he stands there. Andy says, "This is what we do." Jason picks up his machete. Molly says, "Jason, she's all yours." Jason raises his mask and looks at her in the eyes. She's crying and screaming. They put her down on her knees in front of him and hold her to him, her one arm. He slashes open the top of her skull and stabs the machete down into her brain, leaving it there. It penetrates her throat, the blade exposing on the outside of her the Adam's apple area. I know that women don't have those. They let her body fall over. Jason lowers his mask and looks at them three. Molly says, "Jason, we wanted you to Andy says, No, we didn't. It's your home here. You belong here." Stephanie says, "Yeah." He disappears, presumably teleporting somewhere else. The three of them lumber back into the forest. Dean makes his way into Jason's shack. He stares at his mother's head. She comes alive. He waves at it. Stephanie, Andy, and Molly are walking. Stephanie says, "We should have grabbed him." Molly says, "You win some, you lose some." Andy says, "Just you to try to grab Jason Voorhees and live to tell about it. You'd be better off grabbing me. He playfully grabs at her and puts his arm around her shoulder. Jason's mother's head says, "Hello there. I've never seen you before. Are you all alone?" He nods his head. She says, "What a shame. My boy Jason was left out here all alone too once. Do you want to hear a story?" He nods his head. "This is the story of my Jason." When they're about to reach their van, they see flashing lights. Stephanie gasps. She says, "You two run as fast as you can." Andy says, "Huh? No fucking way. I'm not ever leaving you. I'm not going to let you get hurt." She says, "I'm not giving you a choice." She embraces and kisses him and then runs to the lights. Andy starts to cry, but he doesn't have time to let the emotions come out. Molly grabs him and they run towards Jason. Stephanie is met with a swarm of black uniform troopers, obviously. They rush her and zip tie her and take her away. She fights and they tase her. Andy and Molly are back at the camp. They run in the direction of Jason's shack. Stephanie is put inside a black truck and driven away. The black troopers run back towards the main road. Jason's mother says, "Every Friday the 13th, they try to take my son away from me. They try to take our home. And every Friday the 13th, he's here waiting. Nothing and no one will ever destroy him. He is immortal." Suddenly, Jason appears behind Dean. Dean looks up at Jason. Dean's POV. Jason's eyes grow wide as he raises his machete and chops. He chops Dean's head off. We see it rolling on the ground. Then he grabs his mother's head and leaves. Stephanie is in the black truck. She looks up at a black trooper and asks, "Where are you taking me?" The trooper says, "Smith's Grove Sanitarium." The Halloween theme begins playing. "Now I'm going to need you to go to sleep." He puts a gas mask over her face and causes her to pass out. Not a gas mask, but like one of those masks they put on you and give you anesthesia or gas, laughing gas. She passes out. We see the black truck drive away with a barrage of other vehicles with flashing lights behind it. The end. And then the post-credits, Jason enters camp to find Molly and Andy sitting there exhausted. His mother's head says, "Jason, help them. Help them as they helped us." He looks at them, his foot still bleeding. He stands in between them and puts his arms around them. They all three teleport away. His mom's head drops to the ground. "He'll be back. He always comes back," she says. So that's pretty much it. And in terms of the cast, I didn't really figure one out before I did this video, but I'd definitely be happy to do another video talking about who I would want playing all the characters. So anyways, please like this video, comment, and subscribe. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon for the next Slasherverse video.